The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today begins Teacher Appreciation Week, and, thank a teacher. I used to teach, and let me tell you, that's a job that I never want to do again. Not because it's not rewarding, but because it's so damn hard. If your kids are in school somewhere, thank a teacher. They sacrifice so much. I know firsthand because I couldn't do it. I could not put myself through all the red tape, all of the work, all of the hours. A lot of people try to talk about teachers having the summer off. But when I tell you the hours that go in, it's almost a 24-hour job. I mean, by the time you get home and you grade papers and you prepare plans for the next day or for the next week, and then you go after work to the trainings, and then before work you go to trainings and recertifications and continuing education, and it's a full-time job that takes up more hours than you could even counterbalance with a summer break. And so I saw all the red tape and all the difficulty of just getting to the classroom and teaching. And I was like, hell no, to the no, 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 hell to the no, hell to the no. Seriously. So thank a teacher today for being selfless enough to work for the kind of pay that they give them and to put up with all the things. But that's not all I want to talk about in terms of teachers. I want to talk about the spread of teacher strikes across the nation. Wow. Big ups to all of the teachers who are saying not anymore and pay us. It's an absolutely amazing thing. Arizona just got a victory in their protests and their strike that ended last week. According to the Tucson Times, Governor Doug Ducey signed a $10.4 billion state budget that included, on Thursday, an average of 19% pay raise increase for teachers within 3 years. And this is what the governor said. He said, quote, Arizona teachers have earned a raise and this plan delivers. And this is a Republican governor saying this. And there's no way in hell they would have gotten a raise unless they went on strike. Right. This is, as great as it sounds, the speech, if the Republican governor really believed that the teachers deserved a raise, he would not have had to wait until they went on strike. That's number one. But number two, the power of organizing and going and hitting the streets. That has shown itself to be true all across the country, in red states and Republican states. It's really an amazing thing. There's an upcoming protest that's happening in Colorado. The first teacher strike in Colorado starts today. First time since 1994, Pueblo teachers. And if any of the previous strikes are an indication, it's going to spread from that one city throughout the entire state. So that's what's happening around the country. Our teachers are standing, and this is a great move for both not just educators, but for unions across the country to understand the power that the people have, that we have always had. The system does not work without us. There's nothing that functions without us. So even not just teachers, but workers around the world, if they unite, then there's nothing that we can't demand of the system, because the system does not work without our labor. Not yet. We're almost to a point of full automation. We're not there yet. And so while we can still get concessions out of the system, it's time to organize. It's time to organize and demand what we need as workers. And it's so amazing that teachers are still being instructive in their protest, because we could look to Oklahoma, West Virginia, Arizona, and as of today, Colorado as examples of the power of not only collective bargaining and unionizing, or unions rather, but also the power of the individual voice when joined in with others to stand up to a system that does not want to pay. This system is perfectly designed to take everything it possibly can, take all the labor it can from you. Like, it is literally the goal of your bosses to get as much work out of you as they possibly can with paying you as little as they possibly can. Simultaneously, having to pay the highest rent that your landlord can possibly charge you while you get paid the smallest amount that your boss can actually want to pay you. That's capitalism. I mean, that's the bare bones, it's the very, elementary beginning stages, but that's the concept, right? That's the concept. Charge you as much as you can, as someone can charge you, while paying you as little as they can to produce that product. That's the goal. And so without us organizing against those forces, we're helpless. And this is why, I mean, we talk about it often, but this is why there's a spread across the country, particularly specifically by ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Committee. There's a concerted effort to make every single state a right to work state, which is a misnomer, which is a very insidious misnomer, right? It's not the right to work. It's the right to work without having a union. That the reason is because this system, the last key to a quote unquote free market to them, the last key to getting what they need is to make sure that you as the individual worker have no power through collective bargaining. See, if they can get you by yourself, it's quite literally like any type of fight. If they can get you by yourself, then they can just run over you and you have to take whatever they want to give you. Look at Walmart. But if they ever get you in a collective group where you can walk out off their facilities and leave them with what? Nothing but the means of production, without the people to actually implement the production, then they actually have to capitulate and give you a living wage, give you something livable, something that not only livable, like we always say a living wage, but we should have a thriving wage. We should be able to live and live abundantly and not have to live check to check. I mean, people are living check to check. That's not really living. That's surviving. And so long as your boss can keep you by yourself, then they can just do whatever the hell they want to with you. So the teachers are being instructive all across the country, particularly in these red states, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Arizona, and now Colorado. It is an amazing time. And we have teachers to thank. And so in this Teacher Appreciation Week, not only thank your teachers for taking care of your little taking care of your kids and mine. My kids have runny noses as I've been sniffling in this. But anyway, the point is, don't only thank them for teaching your kids right now, but thank them for taking the lead, showing us across the country that there's still power in organizing. There's still power in strikes. There's still power in labor. Samantha Parsons is a former student, a graduate of George Mason University, and she works for a organization called Unkoch My Campus. And they have released a report that outlines how the Koch brothers utilized their donations to control the hiring of professors at George Mason University. Samantha Parsons obtained a series of emails from the university through a Freedom of Information Act request, and through that, she was able to document the reality that despite the university's claims, for many years, the university claimed that the Koch brothers had no influence in the hiring or firing of individuals. The emails that she obtained through a Freedom of Information request outlined that it was the exact opposite, that in fact, the Koch brothers did have a hand in the hiring of professors at George Mason University. And this report from the Associated Press, I'll put the link in the timeline, is disturbing but unsurprising. This is an unfortunate reality in terms of our higher education and how our system works. But according to the Associated Press, quote, the newly released agreements spell out $1 million deals in which the Koch Foundation endows a fund to pay the salary of one or more professors at the university's Mercatus Center, a free market think tank. The agreements require creation of a 5-member selection committee to choose the professors and grant the donors the right to name 2 of the committee members. So in other words, the Koch brothers got to appoint 2 committee members directly to a committee of 5 that were there to choose employees who would be funded by the endowment from the Koch brothers. And the think tank itself is a quote unquote free market think tank that was, designed to promote free market ideas. This is the battleground. I think we on the left and the center left, the Democrats as well as progressives, I think we have engaged in the wrong argument for a long time. Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, and free market capitalists, they are as active on college campuses as we could ever hope to be, not only in the terms of activism, but in terms of the power, the control of the university. I mean, if we really get down to the nitty gritty of it, everything that we learn in economics is based on neoliberal economic theory. So the argument that we're having right now about deplatforming Nazis on college campuses is so irrelevant because look at this power play from the Koch brothers at just one university with just a few $1 million when they have hundreds of millions of dollars to spread across the country at all these universities. And this is exactly what they have been doing. UnkochMyCampus.org outlines a statement directly from the Koch Foundations. These are their own words, according to UnkochMyCampus.org. They said, quote, Koch's integrated strategy uses universities, think tanks, and political spending for the implementation of policy change. They are there for the, quote, structure of social change in the direction of free market capitalism that eviscerates the poorest people in the middle class and the working class. This is what they are funneling all their money, not into just politicians. See, we look at them a lot in terms of what they donate to politicians, but they are influencing campuses. They know that if they can capture a generation of young thinkers, then they've won. And they know this. And this is why you have organizations like Turning Point USA, which is a college-based nonprofit. It is a nonprofit that focuses on colleges and universities, and their sole purpose is to spread free market ideas, free market capitalism, headed up by conservative shill Charlie Kirk. If you've seen him in the video with Candace Owens. He hired Candace Owens recently. This is why organizations like that exist and why they are so well funded. To give you an idea, Charlie Kirk, his Turning Point USA in 2014, they raised $4.3 million to go around and go to campuses around the country and talk about the value of free market capitalism. Not only that, they get directly involved in college elections, student government elections, because they're there to support anyone from a right-wing perspective who is going to be pro-capitalism and push back on any type of moderation of the market. We're not just talking about capitalism. We're talking about the attempt to bring laissez-faire capitalism, but not truly laissez-faire capitalism, but a type of laissez-faire capitalism that's laissez-faire when it comes to you, the worker, that has no type of intervention from the government on behalf of the worker, but a corporatocracy where the government is there for the bidding of corporations to increase their profits. See, they're not really interested in free market capitalism. They're interested in free market capitalism and rugged individualism when it comes to you, the individual. But when it comes to corporations, they want the government to intervene to help their bottom line. But this is what Turning Point USA is, and this is what they do around college campuses. And just to give you an idea of the type of funding that they get, their 2014 Form 990 from the IRS, what they have to file with the IRS as a nonprofit, they raised over $4.3 million just for Turning Point USA. This is just one little project by one guy who didn't even go to college, but he is focusing on colleges because he knew that he could raise money to do that, because it's so important to conservatives to not only, they don't have to infiltrate campuses, right? I was going to say infiltrate, but they don't have to infiltrate campuses because the ideology is in every book that you read on campuses. Every economics program is pure laissez-faire economic theory. You're not going to get an economic analysis of communism. You're not going to get, any conversation about socialism is probably the most socialism you're going to get is Keynes. And then you move away from Keynes, going to just damn near trickle down economic theory, depending on the university that you attend. And so it's not that these organizations have to infiltrate universities. What they're trying to do is utterly crush any type of intellectual thinking that goes beyond what the university teaches. Any type of radicalized thinking, any type of economically radicalized thinking, any type of idea that goes against the grain. See, this is what we have to, I think we've been arguing the wrong thing about college campuses. We like to portray college campuses as some paragon of liberal thinking. But in reality, the people who write the books and the books that the students learn from are and the teachers who are teaching, the professors who are teaching it, in many cases have been completely influenced, if not directly funded, by conservatives and capitalists. And so that's why this story from the AP, Samantha Parsons' work is so important. From Unkoch My Campus, that's the organization. The Associated Press is the link that I got the original story from. I'll share that with you. But that's why it's so important, because we need to begin to expose the reality that while Republicans are on Fox News saying liberal professors at colleges and universities across the country are radicalizing your students, the reality is, yeah, they are. They're radicalizing them with doctrine, with textbooks, with information that conform neatly to whatever the top donor can demand. See the Koch brothers and George Mason University. Sally Albright. I don't talk about her much on the show anymore. Actually, I never really talked about her much. And you are probably thinking, who the hell is Sally Albright? Good that you don't know who she is. She is a political apparatchik, an opportunist who formerly worked for Newt Gingrich and then found her way to the Democratic Party. And she is one of the leading voices who continue not only litigating the Bernie versus Hillary wars, but inflaming it. It's one thing to debate it and to litigate it, which I don't even feel like it's worthwhile doing, but it's another thing to inflame the situation and to actually make it worse. She and people, that overrepresented or overly vocal 8% of those people who actually hate Bernie Sanders, who are very present. I think the whole 8% are on Facebook, on Twitter rather, and they use their platforms to continue to divide us. Right. And I say divide us because without question, there is an us against them, particularly in 2018. If we do nothing else but divide the government, we should have an us. And we should have some type of solidarity amongst those reasonable Americans who don't want to see the Republican Party get another 2 years to do whatever they want to do on policy. So, yes, there is an us. And there is an us that is being divided by people like Sally Albright, Marcus Johnson, and names that if you're on Twitter, you know exactly who they are. But I bring it up for something totally different. I bring up Sally Albright because of a tweet that she tweeted over the weekend. And she said, quote, "History will view the Bernie Sanders phenomenon as the death rattle of the last vestiges of white supremacy in the Democratic Party." And essentially what she's trying to say without saying it, she's trying to say it with, I think I read it from Kyle Kalinske on Twitter. She's trying to lay white supremacy at the feet of Bernie Sanders with plausible deniability to say that that's not what she really said. But this is what she's saying. She's trying to lay all of the vestiges of white supremacy at the feet of Bernie Sanders. And I'm still not talking about the Hillary versus Bernie wars. I'm going somewhere else. This is where I'm going. It's amazing that white liberals and white progressives who are in power, and I want to draw that distinction before I want to give this caveat. One more caveat before I get to the damn point. I was on a show yesterday with the Black Intellectual @_Black Intellectual. Good dude. I shared the link on my tweet on my timeline. Great conversation. And we started talking about the difficulty of being black in progressive spaces and liberal spaces and the Democrat spaces, because, you know, it is not, there is a problem there. There's still a problem of racism there. And he asked the question of who should we really consider to be our allies? Who should be our comrades? And my answer, I want to give that answer before I go into the conversation, because I want you to understand. I want you to understand this from my perspective. There are comrades, allies who would literally march in the streets with us on black issues, stand up to police officers who are, you know, not just sit there and be a bystander, but stand up on behalf of black people to police officers. Historically, there have been white people who would march with us and died with us. And I'm coming to mind of my DSA brother here in Noonan, Georgia, who got basically hog-tied by the police and carried through the streets because he was out there fighting Nazis. You know, there are white progressives and some liberals who would ride for us all the way to the point of no return. They would give their all for our fight. May not be a lot of you, but you're there. But more importantly, it's the fact that those of you who are like that, you're not the ones in power. You're not the ones who are political consultants being paid millions of dollars a year. You're not the ones with the platforms. You're not the ones with the media outlets. You are the working class, middle class, genuinely good people who would meet us in the streets for a rally and protest alongside with us. And I make that huge ass caveat because I want people to understand that not just to say not all white people, but to say there's a very specific group of white progressives and liberals who are as problematic to black people as any other white person in this country. And they are generally the ones with power. They are the ones with political power. They are the ones with platforms. They are the ones with media outlets. They are the ones with the huge followings on Twitter. They're the ones like Sally Albright who have enough influence and enough sway to try to muddy the conversation on white supremacy and try to lay it at the feet of Bernie Sanders, when in reality, white supremacy is a problem in the Democratic Party, period. Before Bernie Sanders, long before Bernie Sanders, and long after him, because so long as people are trying to minimize the problem to being an individual problem instead of a systemic problem, then we're always going to be dealing with white supremacy, not only in the Republican Party, but in the Democratic Party as well. These are the people in Washington, D.C., the people who are running the state parties, the people who are running the national party, the people who get uncomfortable when we actually have to talk about these situations, the people who try to shut you down, try to find a black person to shut you down because they know they can't do it directly, the people who would hire a Joy-Ann Reid to shut down black voices when we stand up and speak out in favor of policies similar to that of Bernie Sanders, because they know they can't do it themselves. So just like conservatives do, they hire black people to attack black people Those are the people who are going to make sure that white supremacy is always strong, even in the Democratic Party. Get the hell out of here, Sally Albright. And it's not even about her. It's about this willingness to identify white supremacy in your political rival, but not the willingness to identify white supremacy in your own circles. Tweet that. Because white people will always, I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat, I don't care if they're conservative or liberal or progressive or socialist, they have no problem. And again, remember the caveat I had at the beginning before you get so uncomfortable in this space, right? You understand, like, there are literally people who would get out in the streets and die with us. But they're few and far and in between, and they are not the ones in power. And those who are in power refuse to acknowledge the racist problems that exist in their power circles. I don't care if they're Democrats. I don't care if they're Republicans. I don't care if they're socialists. There are problems, systemic racism problems in their power circles, in their power structure that they do not want to even acknowledge. But they'll be more than happy to lay racism. They'll call out racism every time they see it. Oh, that Donald Trump, he's a racist. Oh, that Republican Party, the grand old racist. Bernie Sanders, he's a racist. But if we talk about the racist problems of anyone else, if we talk about the Clintons' baggage, if we talk about anything else that steps on their toes, then all of a sudden they become as problematic to black people as Republicans. And I know this personally firsthand. And some of you listening know this personally firsthand. This transcends every part of any ideology, from the far right libertarian all the way to the far left communist. When you have to confront, here's a perfect example. Let me give you an example. Same example I gave Brian on his show yesterday. When I had to be confronted about my transphobia or my problems, I come from the Black Baptist Church, which is as notoriously homophobic as you can imagine, and I was as conservative as a socialist could possibly be, and I had to grow out of that conservatism. I had to grow out of that bigotry. I had to become uncomfortable. I had to have friends who literally would not let me go until I could see that I was a part of the problem. Would not budge, would not move, but would look me in the eye virtually over social media and call me out for the person that I was. And it wasn't until it clicked. They literally had to do that over. I mean, talk about the emotional labor that they had to commit over and over and over and over again, just for me to see the problem that I had, because I was so uncomfortable being called a bigot. Nobody wants to be called a bigot. Nobody wants to recognize their problems. Nobody wants to recognize how they are a part of the systemized marginalization of an entire group of people, even if it's in our own small way. Even if it's not, maybe we aren't the ones going out there. Maybe you aren't the ones going out there saying the N-word. Well, that's literally the least of our problems. Like, the N-word is not systemic. It's not what is the systemic part of systemic racism. It's the people who would turn a blind eye and turn a blind eye to what's happening in their power structures. How are they silencing voices of black people? How are they silencing voices of marginalized groups all across the board? Like, this conversation about race is applicable to every single marginalized group that the Democratic Party wants to bring into their big tent, but they want to bring you into the big tent with a code of silence. You're only going to say so much. You're only going to make them so uncomfortable, but they will get behind you 100% when you point your finger across the aisle and say, look at all those racist Republicans. Well, yeah, they are. They are very racist. They are problematic. They are more detrimental to marginalized communities than any party in existence, right? This is not an equivocation. This is not trying to make a false equivalence here. This is 100% about the reality that there is a problem in terms of marginalized voices and communities. There is a problem across the ideological spectrum, from right all the way to far left, far right to far left. They're varying degrees. They're different intensities. There's a reason why I still say that there is an us, despite the problems of the Democratic Party. There's still an than us in terms of we must divide the government in 2018. So don't let anything that I say be misconstrued as dividing the Democratic Party or dividing the left, because we have one singular purpose right now. Besides all of the policies that we need to get enacted, we have to stop the hemorrhaging in 2018 and at least take one of the houses. Can we get one of the houses? But simultaneously, let the record always reflect that if you have particular conversations, if you talk about the problems of race in the Democratic Party or problems of race in the progressive circles, problems with race in socialist communist circles, if you talk about that, you will be surprised at how quickly people will shut your voice down, even to the extent of shutting down an entire news media outlet. Because nobody wants to be uncomfortable, right? If I were to try to be fair, which I don't care to be, nobody wants to be uncomfortable. I mean, I think about how uncomfortable my friends made me around some key issues that I've already outlined, right? It's never fun to look at the mirror and say, damn, I'm a bigot. I may not be as big a bigot as John McCain or Donald Trump. I said that name I said John very purposefully for a segment later this week. I may not be as big of a bigot as they are, but I still have problems. I still have issues myself. Nobody wants to look at the mirror. And it's so ironic. I mean, this tweet encapsulates it perfectly. This tweet from Sally Albright, she doesn't give a damn about white supremacy for real, because if she did, then she would address it inside of the Democratic Party as well. She would address it only in terms of whatever she believes is white supremacist about Bernie Sanders, which I would argue she's just using that for political gain. She would address it inside the power structure of the DNC. She would address it inside of her own participation in this system. But again, people are 100% okay with pointing out somebody else's bigotry. But if you ever cross that threshold and talk about their own bigotry, you will quickly find out exactly who your real allies are and who they are not. This is why this is why I off with the people in the street. This is why, people who are going to be on the front lines, people who are willing to put their bodies in the way, the white comrades who are willing to put their bodies on the line. This is why I don't have any problem, no real major problem anymore with Antifa. I used to, but I think about Antifa, at least they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're putting their body where their language is. They're not just out there. They're not just out here enjoying the fruits and the power and the money that comes with political power and media power, and then turning a blind eye and silencing any black voice that disagrees with them. Those are the people. Those are the people. Those are the people. Next story. Well, actually, that's it for today. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. Go to patreon.com/the BPD show and become a patron. Continue to support the Benjamin Dixon show. We're still doing things. And this is like the longest tease ever, right? But we're going to announce some things coming pretty soon. So thanks so much for all that you do as a supporter. Patreon.com/the BPD show. And that's it. I will see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.